Conservatives have been giving out copies tonight of what they say is Labour's election campaign war book. The document lists the perceived weaknesses and strengths of both the parties, and the Conservative chairman Brian Mulroney said it also showed that Labour had planned a campaign based on smear and scare. The Labour Party is playing down the significance of the document. They say it's a year old and not the action plan they're working from. Here's our political correspondent Hugh Pym.
War book's available here, ladies and gentlemen.
The Tories were so anxious to get Labour's war book into circulation that they set up a stall outside Central Office. Most of the takers, though, appeared to be their own staff.
Are you Tory party worker?
It was all of 6 months ago that the party chairman was first sent the document in a plain brown envelope. You've had this for 6 months. Why have you decided to release it today?
I was so upset at their attempt to scare pensioners into believing that the re-election of a Conservative government would somehow put their pensions at risk, when everybody knows that isn't true.
So upset, he said, he wanted people to know Labour's campaign tactics, for example, accusing the Tories of planning VAT rises and the document's assessment of Labour's chances. Under the heading Labour Strength, the document lists Tony Blair, young and dynamic, it says, New Labour with new ideas, and the theme Time for Change. But the document also headlines Labour weaknesses, including money, for example on tax, fear of Labour, meaning the hidden left and unions, and what do they stand for, suggesting they're evasive. Labour denied they were hiding anything from the voters.
It doesn't show a cynical view of the voters whatever. What it charted simply was what Labour saw as its strengths and what others saw as the basis on which the election would be fought.
The Liberal Democrats said it was a distraction.
Well, I think that every party produces this kind of document. It's a bit like the end of the instructions for my new fax machine, what to do when there's a fault.
A former Labour press officer, now a journalist, said the party would be worried.
There are embarrassing things the party has said about itself, which they'd rather not have come out. And it has come out right at the worst possible time, at the height of the campaign.
Labour sources say the document's a year old and they deny that its publication will damage them. The Conservatives, though, see it as an important piece of ammunition and a morale booster for their troops on the ground in this final stage of the campaign. Hugh Pym, News at 10, Westminster.
Earlier, Labour announced it would set aside £1 billion from the midweek national lottery for special projects in what Tony Blair called the people's priorities, health and education. These might include after-school homework clubs and high street healthy living centres. Our political correspondent Jackie Ashley reports.
As punters bought their tickets for tonight's midweek draw, Labour claimed the high profits from the People's Lottery should go to what concerned the people, like healthy living centres. Tony Blair visited one today in West London, which could be boosted by lottery money to offer a whole range of services, from diet advice to dentistry. Training teachers in computing and after-school homework clubs would also receive funds. But shouldn't all this come from the government?
No money is being taken out of our commitments in health and education, but we are saying that where that money from the lottery is there, let it go to the causes that the people really want.
But the Conservatives said it proved there was a black hole in Labour's spending plans.
The frankest admission yet that their sums don't add up. They are flailing around looking for money to pay for commitments that they've already been talking about.
The core National Health Service must not be funded from the lottery. Education must not be funded from the lottery. And we're a party which says you must fund these things by raising the taxes to pay for them. And we're willing to do that. And Labour aren't.
Did shoppers in Birmingham agree lottery money should go to education and health?
Because I don't think there's enough tax and contributions to go around to pay for it, so I think it could come out of the lottery.
I think it's a funny way to run finances, actually, just sort of by chance almost. I don't like that.
Labour say their research shows people are unhappy with lottery money going to elitist institutions such as Eton College and the Royal Opera House. They're convinced their plans to redirect lottery money will prove a big hit with the voters. Jackie Ashley, News at 10, Westminster.
In a speech in Aberdeen tonight, the Prime Minister spoke off the cuff about the United Kingdom and why he's against a separate Scottish Parliament and about Europe. ITN's David Rose was there.
John Major is keen to get away from issues like health and education and from formal platform speeches.
You thought I was going to be up there, didn't you?
Tonight in Aberdeen, he threw away his set speech and tackled Europe and devolution, which he thinks can turn this election around.
Think about what is at risk if devolutionary policies and a Europe of the regions were the policy of the British government, and then shy away from it and vote for the only party in this election that will keep the United Kingdom united at home and the United Kingdom a strong voice in Europe and in the councils of the world.
Canvassing elderly voters outside Edinburgh today, Labour's Scottish leader was delighted that two of Scotland's largest financial institutions said they were unworried by the prospect of a Scottish Parliament.
It is a huge blow to the Tory propaganda offensive, which tries to suggest that what we're suggesting is going to be dangerous for the unity of the country. If big business doesn't agree with the Prime Minister, I think the Prime Minister should rethink what he's saying.
The Prime Minister's policies on Europe and devolution were also criticised today by the Scottish National Party and the Scottish Liberal Democrats, the SNP first.
I want a Scotland which values itself on the excellence of its education, the compassion of its social services, whether it's offering hope to our young people, security to our old people.
If, heaven forbid, there was to be another Conservative government that continued to frustrate the legitimate aspirations of the Scottish people, then I think that would produce the kind of pent-up frustration that might well manifest itself in a greater demand for separation.
Despite Mr Major's warning, the opinion polls in Scotland have consistently indicated that over 80% of Scots voters intend to support parties committed to devolution or to independence. The Conservatives must comfort themselves with the fact that the opinion polls last time underestimated their true support. David Rose, News at 10, Aberdeen.
Other election news, Agriculture Minister Douglas Hogg was reassuring farmers today over the government's handling of the BSE crisis. Visiting a beef farm in Bedfordshire, he said only the Conservatives were competent enough to look after the interests of the farming community. On Merseyside, Shadow Foreign Secretary Robin Cook said crime was the only business that had boomed under the Conservatives. He claimed that since the Tories had been in power, crime figures had doubled. But Labour, he added, would be tough on crime and on the causes of crime. In Surrey, Liberal Democrat spokesman Peter Thurnham was at Surbiton Station handing in a petition complaining about the quality of the local train service. Since privatisation, he said, operators were making profits at the expense of commuters. As we approach the final week of the election campaign, News at 10 will be questioning all three main party leaders live. Tomorrow we talk to Tony Blair, on Friday John Major. But we start tonight with the Liberal Democrats leader Paddy Ashdown. He's with our political editor Michael Brunson at Westminster.
Paddy Ashdown, what do you make of this war book story this evening?
I think it's a pretty desperate throw by the Tories. All parties have a similar book, and you may be absolutely certain that there's one probably several tomes long tucked away in a safe and Conservative central office, and if there isn't, they're not being professional. Look, I'm not interested in war books. I'm much more interested in school books. Now, that's the real issue we should be discussing in this election, and that's what we've been saying today when we said that we will make a commitment to make sure that the literacy problem that Britain has, some of which is connected with the fact that we spend less on school books than any other European nation, is tackled, and we will make sure that double the amount of money spent on school books and equipment in all the schools of our country, and that will mean that no child in Britain will have to go without a school book and have to borrow or use a photocopy and have access to a computer as well. Now, that's the stuff the election should be about, not all this kind of shenanigans.
But in a sense, every party, and including your own, gets up to some tricks in the election, don't they? Call them dirty tricks or call them whatever. Look at the way that you seem to be taking a double standard, if I may say so, on tactical voting. In some places, you are saying, oh, it's us in a two-horse race, and in other places you're plainly making no effort at all so that Labour can get in.
No, that's absolute nonsense. We're fighting every seat, and we're fighting it with equal enthusiasm. Of course, every party targets...
But that's surely not true. Some places you're making a huge effort otherwise to urge tactical voting.
Michael, every party targets. We will always target our resources. The Labour Party does, the Conservative Party does. What we will never do is target our message. Our message is not trimmed for this class or that class. It encompasses the whole of the country, and I think in that area we're different, and we are determined that we tell the truth in this election. But look, tactical voting, it exists. I don't necessarily recommend it, but it's there. It's one of the reasons people vote. Unhappily, with our present electoral system, it has to exist. You have to sometimes cast your vote against the thing you want least rather than for the thing you want most. Change the electoral system and that would change. And incidentally, all parties do it. I mean, you talked about the Liberal Democrats, but in Millbank Towers, the great headquarters of the Labour Party, there are phone banks ringing up Liberal Democrat voters. Some of them I know because they've contacted us. Some of our members have been rung 5 times in Conservative Labour marginals, persuading them to vote tactically. And there are Conservative members of Parliament down in the West Country who know they're about to lose their seats to the Liberal Democrats, who are rushing around talking up the Labour vote as hard as they can, because it's the only way they can save their seats. Now, regrettably, with our present electoral system, tactical voting is a fact of life. I want people to vote not just for removing the Tories, or in some cases for keeping Labour out, as in, for instance, the Conservative voters in Rochdale, but I want them also to vote for the only party that offers investment in education and investment in our schools, which the others won't offer.
You see, that's what I don't quite understand, because you started this campaign giving very much the impression of saying, look, don't speculate. You were berating me, actually. Don't speculate on the outcome of the election. Don't sort of talk to me about votes. Just go out there and vote for Liberal Democrats in pure honesty, if you like, because we represent something that's different.
Michael,
and now you're talking about tactical voting.
No, look, if what is most important for you and your family is to invest in that school, to save that teacher's job, to make sure that your child is not in a class of more than 40, to do something about the crisis in your hospitals, there's only one party that is offering you that choice. If that's what comes first for you, then obviously you vote for the Liberal Democrats, since now it's impossible to tell the difference between the Conservatives and Labour policy. If item number 1 for you and your family is to get rid of the Conservative or to keep Labour out, as is the case in Rochdale, then you'll use your vote tactically. I'm here as the leader of the Liberal Democrats to recommend, surprise, surprise, that people should vote Liberal Democrat. But I understand that they'll have other reasons for voting, and I respect that.
Looking back as this campaign now draws towards its final days, would it be fair for people to say, what's Paddy Ashdown done except be a spoiler in this occasion? You spoilt, for example, the TV debate. You would say, I suppose, it's legitimate, but they would say, that is...
Oh, come, 80% of the people of this country, by all the measurements that we have, were in favour of all 3 party leaders taking place. I mean, look, Kenneth Clarke debated with his 2 opposite numbers, Gordon Brown and Malcolm Bruce. Michael Howard did the same. What's the Prime Minister frightened of? I mean, you know, the Prime Minister shouldn't be allowed to design a debate that's easiest for him. This is an interrogation by the people of this country of all the 3 parties. And the Prime Minister mustn't be allowed just to design what's easiest for him.
My point really, I was using that as an example. My point really is that you say you wanted to make the difference, as it were, to go off on completely your own programme, but under, as you say, what you would think of as a rotten voting system, you in the end up as the sort of irritant between the 2 parties.
Oh, absolute nonsense. Look, I can't now tell the difference between Conservative and Labour. They've adopted the same spending plans. They won't make any difference to school. If you vote Labour, you'll get a different label on number 10 Downing Street, but you won't save that teacher's job. The only people who offer you that choice are the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you very much indeed.
Other news coming up tonight, including